Good morning. Welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Sunday, August 31st, 2025. And can you believe we are at the end of yet another month? Just seems like yesterday I was saying, geez, can you believe we're at the end of July and into August? Here we are, about to hit footy finals. Great for those involved, not so great for our supporters that aren't involved. At least we've still got the Melbourne Storm to look at anyway, to go for. I don't really follow rugby league either, but I do follow the Mighty Storm just to see how they're going. Occasionally, if there's no other footy on, I'll switch over to watch them, but definitely my second team, my first team going into the footy finals this year. As for the AFL finals, I know we're still on it's the boxing channel, but if you had to ask me about the AFL footy finals, I'm a Brisbane Lions man, I reckon, for the finals. Just love the way they play, love their coach, got some great players, and a pretty neutral type of team. The team I would hate to win it the most, well, of course, I was going to say Collingwood, but Hawthorn would have to be up there as well. Anyway, enough of the footy talk. I've had enough of footy this year when half your team is wanting to leave the club, like at Carlton. Not great times ahead, but we'll see. As we always seem to say at Carlton, it's always next year. Let's blow the place up and bring in all new players and coaches, all that sort of. Anyway, I'm gonna shut up because I'm going on for too long about this about the footy. All right, on this stage, just a couple of things. Back in 1984, it was going to be the heir apparent to Larry Holmes at one stage. I'm speaking of Pinklon, Mr. Pink Thomas. It's a pretty cool name, isn't it? Pinklon. The obvious nickname being Pink or Mr. Pink or whatever it's going to be. But Pinklon Thomas defeated Tim Witherspoon for the WBC heavyweight title. The fight took place in Las Vegas, Nevada. This was a big upset at the time. Pinklon Thomas was regarded as an up-and-comer. Tim Witherspoon, he'd won that belt after Larry Holmes had vacated it to take the IBF belt and was sort of seen as the next sort of champion in waiting. He'd given Larry Holmes a very, very tough fight the year before and was actually unlucky not to win that decision. A lot of people actually thought he beat Larry Holmes in that fight in 1983. So he won, or did he win the vacant title, or was this for the vacant title? It might have been for the vacant title from memory. But either way, Pinklon Thomas defeated Tim Witherspoon by, I think, majority decision by memory, I think it was. All right, if my memory serves me correct. The other one on this day was 2019, and Vasily Lomachenko defeated Luke Campbell at the O2 Arena in London. Luke Campbell, the Olympic gold medalist, and we actually met him a couple of years before that. He was about to actually fight Jorge Linares when we were at the gym in Newark, California, with the twins at the Legends boxing gym. It's where Oscar Valdez was training at the time. And the boys got some really good sparring. I think, who was the guy, the Irishman that gave the bird at the Olympic Games? Michael Conlon, he was there as well. So the boys got some really good sparring. But yeah, Luke Campbell just called in. He was fighting, I think, a couple of weeks later in Inglewood, California against Linares. He would lose that fight and then would lose to... he would actually win a couple after that. Then he would fight Lomachenko, and I think his last fight was actually against Ryan Garcia. So anyway, that was on 2019. 6 years ago? So how time flies. All right, now, yes, I got a little bit of feedback about my video or my comments about where Aussie boxing will be in 10 years' time. And someone actually brought up a good point. What about No Limit? Where do you see No Limit? I mean, they're the biggest sort of power brokers in Aussie boxing at the moment. They have a monopoly of the TV. They have pretty much a stranglehold on boxing in this country at the moment. So there's a couple of people that actually said, well, so where do you see the No Limit deal? I did sort of touch on that. I think there'll be a lot more variety, a lot more people involved, a lot of up-and-coming promoters that will be happy to have a crack at what No Limit have got. I think in 10 years' time, I 100% think that, or the model that we currently have now, will be no longer. I think that, I think I wouldn't be surprised in the next sort of year or two, whenever that contract expires, I would think, and you've got to remember, DAZN and Foxtel, I think the union becomes official in a couple of months' time from memory. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the case. And I think the new people involved that will be running the show will let the contract expire with no limit. Again, I'm not 100% sure when it actually expires, but I think it's a year or two away. It's not that far. And it sort of coincides what's going on with DAZN and the Foxtel takeover. So I think 100% when the new management, I suppose you would call it, come in, that they'll be looking at the no limit deal and saying, okay, we can still support these guys, we can still give them resources, we can still give them all the support they need. They are still doing really good things, like them or not, they are still doing good things, putting on big shows, some better than others, as we know. But I would think that they would say, yeah, well, we still need these guys. What we need to do is still open it up, or open the business up to other promoters. We can't knock or lock out other promoters who are doing some really good things. Now, Ace Boxing have done the right thing. They had the Premier Boxing Series, of course, on 7. That was always going to be tough because the mainstream channels like 7, 9 and 10 have always had their heads up their ass as far as boxing goes. So I always thought, even though the Ace Boxing shows were fantastic, I think they did an awesome job. All the shows were very, very good. It was probably on a hide into nothing as far as actually having it stick. Because as I said, the mainstream channels only think about a handful of sports and they don't give a shit about any other sports. They'll probably entertain them and go, well, this is way too hard. Let's just go back to football or cricket or basketball or whatever the hell it is. And that's what they do. So Ace Boxing has been smart and they have hooked up with No Limit, which is a very, very smart thing to do. You've got Tasman fighters who are with DAZN. Of course, they're sort of linked with Matchroom. So very, very big players, just a level under No Limit. Well, probably on the world stage, they're probably past No Limit because they go international. No Limit sort of don't. So, but in Australia, they would be sort of number 2. But then you've got someone like Will Tomlinson with Wildfighter in Melbourne doing really good things. You've got Ricky Colissimo. Is that Colissimo? I think that's his name. Sorry, Ricky. I've never met you, Ricky, but I've seen you on social media. The Wanderer Promotions, they're starting to do some big things. They're only fresh out of the gate, though, so give them time. We all come out 100 miles an hour and then reality sits in and we might have to make some adjustments. So give them time. But I like the enthusiasm of Wanderer Promotions. So, and not just them, there's others like the Dragonfire in Western Australia. There's some very, very good promoters out there. So I think what will happen is even though the big boys like No Limit, you would think when the marriage happens that Tasman and the DAZN deal will come in with the Foxtel deal. So there's probably going to be 2 major players, Tasman and No Limit. But I would think that if it is DAZN, they will probably have people that actually care about boxing and are interested in boxing and want to make it part of the platform. Of course, it's probably one of the biggest sports on their platform, if not the biggest. I know American football and that's on there, but it's big news. They're heavily invested in boxing. So I would think that when this merger or this takeover, whatever you might want to call it, takes place, I think they'll be looking at boxing in Australia as a whole and not just pigeonholing it. Because you've got to remember with Foxtel, the powers that be there would have went, this boxing thing's way too hard. We've been burnt so many times by promoters out there that have promised a lot and delivered nothing. They've wasted money, hasn't worked, it's too hard. You've got to remember too, boxing's way down the totem pile as far as importance goes. Let's just give it to these guys. They seem to know what they're doing. They've got a bit of a following or a bit of contacts with the NRL. Let's just give it to them. It's just easier. Just give it to them and let them do it. But the DAZN, on the other hand, will come in and go, no, while we have a vested interest in boxing and we want to get the best for what's best for boxing in Australia, not just palm it off to whoever seems to be in the best position to handle it. So that's why I think it'll change. I don't think the No Limit model will be around. Definitely, I wouldn't, not even in probably 3 years' time, let alone 10. No Limit will hopefully be still around. Hopefully Tasman Fighters will still be around. Hopefully all the other promoters are coming through and there'll be others that are coming through as well. So I think it's actually good news. I'm wrapped with the merger between the two, by the way, or the takeover. I think for us boxing fans anyway, it's going to be fantastic. But that's what I think about the No Limit deal. Will they be around? 100% they will. But will they have the current power they have now? I 100% doubt it. I strongly doubt it that they will have the hold on boxing in Australia now, which will be a good thing for Australia. I think we need variety. We need other promoters, because what you've got to remember, What about the Wild Fighters and the Wanderer promotions and the Dragonfires? And I'm just naming a few, by the way. There's plenty of really good promoters out there. What incentive have they got to really grow the sport and put the shows on? Because remember, you can't just have all these big pay-per-views and the Foxtel sports. You need the events. You need fights underneath them. You need these smaller club shows. There's a lot of fighters out there. They need to have fights, and promoters obviously do it. Some of them do it as a living and all this sort of stuff. So we need those smaller promoters coming through. What incentive are they going to have to actually grow their business and put fight nights on if there's no possibility of progressing and having a crack at a fight night on Fox or DAZN or whatever it might be? And I've spoken to a couple of promoters who are getting a little bit disenchanted with it all, saying, why am I even bothering doing this? I'm getting no love, I'm getting no support, no money, I've got to do it all myself. And those guys just get it all handed to them on a silver platter. That's what's sort of being said out there. So that's why I would hope that whoever takes over the boxing portfolio or the boxing business or whatever it is will know the sport and have a passion for the sport and actually sit down and say, okay, well, what's best for boxing in this country? And it is not having a monopoly, it is spreading the love all around. So that's what I think will happen with that, which is, I think, again, a really, really good thing. And no limit is a good thing for Australian boxing, don't get me wrong, but I just don't see the sense in having a monopoly. It does make sense to me, by the way, if I was running Foxtel and had all those sports, the big sports like AFL and rugby and all that sort of stuff, I'd be probably just palming it off to someone like they have as well. But I think that will change. So anyway, now a couple of just quick things on the world front. I did see that Anthony Joshua is out until 2026. They're still looking to put the fight on with Fury next year. I don't know, the longer it goes on, the more I doubt it will happen, but he's out for the rest of 2026. But one fighter who's not is Joseph Parker. He's going to fight on October 25th in Ireland. Now, I did say yesterday there's 3 fighters, Daniel Dubois, Derek Chisora and Fabio Wardley in the mix for this big fight on October 25th. I did say yesterday that I would strongly doubt it would be Daniel Dubois, but he's actually teasing that a big fight for him is about to be announced. So are we going to see Parker and Dubois? What happens then with Alexander Usyk? Who does he fight? Is maybe the Moses Otama fight already in the works and they're going to vacate the WBO belt and Dubois and Parker are going to fight for the vacant belt? Who knows? I mean, it does make a little bit of sense now that they're both, well, Parker's locked in a date and a venue in Ireland. And Dubois is leaking that he's about to announce a big fight as well. So Derek Chisora, who knows where he's at? I don't think he really matters in the scheme of things anyway. Just pretty much a tune-up for Joseph Parker. Fabio Wardley's, probably the dark horse. But it could be some big news there. So we'll keep a look out for that over the next sort of week or two. Now, yesterday I also said about not much happening this weekend. I think next weekend as well before we get into Crawford. And I did say about some legendary fights that might be good to watch on YouTube. There was an article I read a couple of days ago about some more the watchable fights at this time of year with nothing happening. And apparently August is the worst month on the calendar year. So, or by stats, apparently, that in boxing, that notoriously every year in August there's nothing happening. And well, it makes sense this year, doesn't it? Because nothing has happened at all. But again, we're only a couple of weeks away from one of the biggest fights of the last decade. So I've got together just 10 fights I'll quickly go through. Now these aren't some of the super fights or the fights of the year or fights of the decade, whatever it might be. They're just 10 very, very entertaining fights for certain reasons. I'll just quickly go through them, won't bore you with it all, but for all different reasons. As I said, a lot of them aren't memorable fights or they're not the Gaddy Ward fights and these sorts of things. They're just 10 fights, really intriguing to sit down and be entertained for different reasons. I'll go through them anyway. All right, no particular order this, by the way. I've gone for Mike Tyson, Buster Douglas. This was actually a pretty good fight all the way through. Douglas was obviously a heavy underdog. He came out firing, and I remember watching this fight as a young kid thinking, hang on, is this actually going to happen? And as the rounds went on, everyone in the pub, and I'm sure right around the world that were watching in other venues were saying, geez, is this actually going to happen? Is Buster Douglas actually going to beat Mike Tyson? And as the tension and drama built throughout the fight, as Mike Tyson started to wilt And James Buster Douglas kept just growing in confidence and dominating the fight. And then he got dropped in the 8th round or 9th round, 8th round, whatever it was. And then, of course, the big knockout at the end. It's just such a high drama fight is Douglas and Tyson. It's really worth sitting down and actually watching it again because just all the emotions during that fight of what was happening. Because you've got to remember Mike Tyson was thought to be unbeatable. And a journeyman who'd lost just the year before, been knocked out by Tony Tucker, actually might have been a couple of years before actually, was about to pull off the greatest upset in boxing history. So that's very, very watchable on a cold winter's day. The other one I've got here is Sugar Ray Leonard, Thomas Hearns, number 2. Now we all know about number 1, fantastic fight. We all know Sugar Ray coming back in the 14th round, but up to that point, it was just a good fight between two, obviously stars of the sport. But watch the second fight. Thomas Hearns had waited, 8 years, 9 years for the rematch. He got it. He dropped Leonard twice. It was just back and forth. Leonard came back and nearly had Hearns gone in the 12th round. Just a really, really good... Look, both of these guys were well past the peak. But as far as just an entertaining fight, as I said, with drama, emotion, excitement back and forth, really, really good fight to sit down and watch. So that's Leonard Hearns 2, not number 1. The other one, Julio Cesar Chavez. Again, this is no particular order, but Julio Cesar Chavez, Edwin Rosario. Now, Chavez had gone up from 130 up to 135. The reason I say to watch this fight is because, well, look, it was a domination from Julio Cesar Chavez, but this fight is where the legend, in my opinion, was born. Before that, very, very good fighter at 130, defended the title numerous times, had some big scalps on his resume, but this is the fight, I think, that made Julio Cesar Chavez what he ended up being. Rosario had knocked out Livingston Bramble in 2 rounds and was just on a tear, very, very sort of dominant fighter. And he'd lost a very contentious decision to Camacho, I think the year before or 2 years before that, whatever it was. And Julio Cesar Chavez went up and absolutely dismantled Rosario. So it's just a good fight to see Julio Cesar Chavez at his absolute best. Just about to hit his prime. I don't think he was even in it, but such a dominant performance. I really recommend to watch Julio Cesar Chavez at his very best. Absolutely taking Edwin Rosario apart for that world lightweight title. The other one, Roberto Duran, Iran Barkley. Look, this is obviously not too... Well, we've got one fighter way past his prime, one fighter who was always pretty limited in Iran Barkley, but the fight they put on in 12 rounds and the emotion. And I still remember when Duran dropped Barkley in the 12th round or 11th round, whatever. I think it might have been the 11th round, whatever. And the crowd went up. They were all just for Duran. And, what was it, 1989? So I think he would have been late 30s, I'm thinking. Was not supposed to beat Barkley, who had just knocked out Hearns in the 3rd round to take that belt. An unbelievable fight, and I really highly recommend it. I'm sure you've seen it, but watch it again. Just a great, great fight. Duran versus Iran Barkley. Fantastic fight. The next one, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, John McGovey. You see a bit of a theme with these fights, all from the sort of 80s and 90s, sort of my era. But I highly recommend you watch them. But Marvin Hagler, John McGovey, the beast. Undefeated. I think he'd won all his fights by knockout up to that point. They didn't call him the beast or they called him a beast for a reason. Look, his opposition was limited, I will say that, but he was a scary dude. And Hagler took him on, and it was a great fight. I mean, Hagler ended up stopping him in the 11th round, but again, just a back and forth type of fight. McGovey was overmatched, but he wouldn't give in. He kept coming back at Hagler. He kept sort of trying to go with Marvelous Marvin Hagler, and as I said, he got stopped in the end, but it was a really, really entertaining fight. Well, it's certainly not, and a lot of these aren't, as I said, super fights or whatever, but just really, really good fights to sit down and watch for all different reasons. All right, the next one. This is probably similar to the Chavez and Rosario fight. Sit down and watch Pernell Whitaker and Greg Haugen. Now, Greg Haugen was a limited type of world champion. He'd won the belt and lost it to Vinny Paz. He regained it. And this IBF lightweight belt this was. And Whitaker had lost a really highly contentious decision to Jose Luis Ramirez, I think a year or two before that. So, where are you, buddy? Where's he gone? Just waiting for this dog who lives here to come out. Come here, man. And again, you want to see Pernell Whitaker at his absolute finest. And just totally dominating Greg Haugen, who was bloody tough. He went 12 rounds, but pretty much lost every round. I know it won't be the most exciting fight. Certainly not a Juro Gaddy and Mickey Watering like that, but Pernell Whitaker, an absolute masterclass in outboxing Greg Haugen over 12 rounds. And Haugen would actually go on and beat Camacho for the WBO belt after this, so it wasn't like he was washed. He would fight Chavez as well in Mexico in front of 130,000 people. The guy was tough, the late Greg Haugen. But again, not a fight of the year candidate, not a war, but just Pernell Whitaker at his finest. So check that one out. Got a couple more here. Aaron Pryor, Alexis Arguello, number 1. Excuse me, it's a little bit chilly again this morning. Arguello going up to 140 to fight Aaron Pryor. Back and forth fight, great fight. Both fighters took so much punishment. Pryor got him out of there, I think in the 13th or 14th round or something like that. But just one of those fights, again, just a drama-filled fight, back and forth, both landing some great shots. And the emotion of Pryor stopping Arguello in the end when he sort of slumps down the ropes and gets saved by the referee after such a war. Yeah, just a great fight was Pryor Arguello, number 1. And then I've got 3 Aussie fights. So I can't sort of do this segment without putting 3 fights in there. And these ones look pretty easy for me. I love watching these fights back all the time, and I'll make it quick. But we've got Lester Ellis and Barry Michael, well, for obvious reasons, and a 15-round war. The lead up to the fight was crazy between the two. It wasn't on a national scale; it's more on a state level. It was a Victorian fight, but so much riding on it. You had Barry Michael backed by the Painters and Dockers, and Lester Ellis backed by the Carlton crew, and that sort of element, that crowd. But the fight itself, all that aside, was just a back and forth war. Barry Michael got on top as the fight went on, but Lester Ellis at 20 years of age gave as good as he got. Just a sensational fight to go back and watch. The other one, another obvious one, Jeff Hardy and Dennis Andrees. The emotion of this fight, he pretty much lost every round after 11 rounds in this fight in Atlantic City. Took the fight as a late replacement and took it up to Andrees, who'd given Thomas Hearns a great fight just a couple of years before for that WBC light heavyweight title, so the same belt on the line in this one. Jeff Harding came out in that last round. I still remember jumping around in the living room, going nuts, a little bit like Jeff Fennick at ringside, going crazy, jumping up and down. Well, that was us in my living room at home, just going crazy as Jeff Harding. That truly rocky moment where he came from behind and won the title, had blood streaming down his face. Yeah, he lost every round pretty much anyway, but he'd been sort of a bit like Rocky, I suppose. He'd been sort of busting Andrees up along the way, losing the rounds, but really doing some damage inside to Andrees. And then it all just come to fruition in the last round where he stormed out and dropped Dennis Andrees a couple of times, and the referee called it off in the 12th round. So that was a memorable moment for me. And another one that doesn't get spoken about a lot for me, it's a Jeff Fennick fight, but it's not a Zuma Nelson. For me, it's Samat Payakaroon. Now, this is the only fight that sort of doesn't go too long. It was a 4th round knockout by Jeff, but this is purely a nostalgic type of fight. The build up to this fight, Jeff was the IBF 118-pound champion. He'd beaten Jerome Coffey, Steve McCrory, Daniel Zaragoza, but going up to 122 and fighting for a WBC belt. Come here, man. All right, okay, we'll go across. There's got cars coming. To go up and fight for a WBC belt was something that, Aussies sort of hadn't done. Well, not that many Aussies had fought for world titles at that stage since the halcyon days of Rose and Famishon and these types of guys. But he went up, and I remember, the word on Payakaroon was just he was a gun Thai fighter, and he was some superstar over there, and he'd beaten Lupi Pintor, knocked him out for that WBC belt, and he was sort of looked at as a fighter that might just be too high a mountain to climb. I suppose that's the best word. And Jeff Fennick went out there and absolutely wiped the floor with Payakaroon. And when he went down in the 4th round with that right hand on the ropes, hit the deck, and the crowd going nuts, and Jeff being launched into the air with that WBC belt, it was just fantastic. So again, not a memorable fight as far as a war between the two, but just what it meant to Aussie boxing at that time. We had a fighter that was at the top, The IBF belt at the time we had that was sort of seen as, you know, not a great belt to have. It only been formed a year or two before, but to win that WBC belt, the green belt, in the way that he did, we just all knew that we had a true superstar in our hands and a true pound for pound fighter in Jeff Fenech. And I think at one stage, I think he was ranked at number 2 or 3 pound for pound in the world. Can you believe that? I think Jeff actually shared a post recently back, I can't remember when it was. It might have been the late 80s, early 90s, something like that, when I think he might have been behind Pernell Whitaker, and that was it, if you can believe. Maybe Chavez, I can't remember, but can you believe that? We talk about how good Jai Pataya and, you know, is at the moment, and, you know, Tim Tszyu, we thought, you know, how high they might have been, and, you know, talking about maybe getting into the pound for pound. Well, Jeff Fenech was in the top 2 or 3. Pretty crazy at the time, but I still remember that fight with Samart Parkaroon. So check those fights out. I'm sure you've seen them, but if you're looking for something to do in front of the fire over the next sort of week or so, check those fights out. Do the rewind, go back and watch them, because they were just fantastic fights for all different reasons. But they're sort of some of my favourites anyway. So give me your favourites. What are some of the fights that you think other boxing fans should watch? And I don't want the usual Gutty and Ward and Hagler Hearns. I want other fights that maybe might just not be considered like the ones I've just mentioned then, that you might go, yeah, okay, these are really worth a watch or a rewatch, whatever it might be. So anyway, guys, having said that, that's going to do it for today. Hope you have a great Sunday. We'll catch you tomorrow.